I'll just quickly talk about the theme and recap what we've been doing so far. If you've been following along with us, then you already know the theme of equity. And you can read these thoughts on why we're focusing on this. But again, basically, this whole series is just focusing on how we can use design thinking to address the problems, equitable problems. Okay. Alrighty. Right, and tonight, if you didn't know, we're going to be doing some ideation work. This is a solution ideation workshop, and before was the user research workshop, so you all should have, well, hopefully you'll have some research insights that you can use tonight to ideate some solutions to your topic or problem you're working on. And the three ladies that will be helping you tonight, we have Minjun Chen. She's a designer at Amazon. We have Christine Fair. She's a lead product designer at Imperative. And then Ijeoma Eshin Yebuchi. And she's a quality analyst engineer at NPR. Alrighty.
Awesome.
And starting off our activities tonight, Christine will start us off. And Christine, if you want to take it away from here.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Jasmine. And thanks to the team at Hexagon Houston and all of you for joining us on the workshop tonight on building equity into design. If anybody has any questions as we go along, feel free to jump in or interrupt me or post your questions in the chat and I'll try to keep an eye on it. But if there's a question there that I'm not addressing, again, feel free to just kind of jump in and make sure that everybody's getting their questions answered. So the first part of the workshop tonight is going to be an ideation exercise. And our goal for this part is really for each team to just generate as many different ideas for your problem as you can. And during this exercise, there's really no such thing as a bad idea. So we really don't want you to censor self at all and just, put everything that you can think of out there. And we will be going through this exercise pretty quickly since we have a lot of content to cover tonight. And so the kind of shortest idea sort of generating activity that I've used is one where you use the 5W and 1H question. So these are the questions that each team will be answering tonight. So the 5Ws are the why, who, when, and where, and what. And then the 1H is the how. So this slide really shows you what those questions are and kind of why we're going to be answering them as part of this exercise. So I'll let people kind of read these, but you really are going to, for the why, you want to really think about the goal and understanding the goal of the problem you're trying to solve. The who is fairly straightforward if you know who your audience is, but there might be different groups within your audience that have different needs. And so you might be focusing on one or more of the audiences that are in the answer to your who. The next part is the when and where. And this is where you're really going to define and spell out your user context and the needs that they have, right? So I think of, when you teach, when you're doing like mobile design, you're always thinking about one-handed design because people are so distracted with mobile use. So kind of think about those types of contexts and needs that your users might have and how focused they might be. And then for the how, you really want to think about how you would tell if your solution made a difference. So you want to be able to kind of know what success would be when you're solving your problem. So each team is going to answer that kind of this first set of questions together. And then when we get to the what question, each individual team member will ideate on the what question using the Post-its in your team's workspace. And the what question is where you're really going to just list ideas that solve for the why, who, when, where, and how part. And then, the next steps of this will be that in the rest of the workshop tonight, you'll do a little bit more work on ideation, and then we'll prioritize some of the different solutions you have, and then create finally a mini storyboard or a user journey map, and that'll be the final part of tonight's workshop. So to give a kind of example of this, sort of like all of the exercises that we're doing tonight, we came up with this idea that an example problem of a restaurant team who's going to use a reservation management system. And so for our examples that we'll be sharing, it'll be kind of as if we're the ones that are building this restaurant reservation management platform. So if we think about the exercise that we're about to do for ideation, we've answered those questions for this example problem of the restaurant system. So we'll kind of look at these. So we're saying that to understand their goal, our goal is to just design this system, right? That's the problem that we're working on. Who are we solving that problem for? It's going to be for the restaurant staff, the people that work there. So I think it can be confusing because like you think of the clients of a restaurant or the who of a restaurant sometimes as the people that eat there. But in this case, the people using the software would be the people working there. So we want to make sure that the platform works for them. The when and the where is just at the restaurant. And it would be kind of probably all the time that the restaurant's open and also before and after the shifts. And then how would we know that our solution was successful? So in this case, I think that you would see that, maybe you had improved service, so maybe you had higher guest ratings on, something, or maybe we had more tables turned over and increased the number of guests we were able to serve or something like that. So again, like these questions are the ones that you will answer collectively as a team. And then we'll kind of get out into our breakout groups and each individual team member will answer the what question on their Post-its. So I also included on this a few examples of these, what the Post-its might look like if someone had done this ideation exercise and some of the team members had answered on the Post-its. So those are just some examples that maybe they could, mark the parties as arrived, seated, late, or done. So they can kind of keep track of all of the things, all of the parties that are mentioned on this reservation management platform. So that's kind of a brief overview. So basically, every team is going to have a workspace on the Miro board, and at the top of the team workspace, your team will answer the questions for why, who, where, when, and how. And then you'll have a couple of minutes to do that. And it's just really important that the team have some alignment on those questions so that everyone has the same direction when you're answering the what question. That's the real ideation part of this exercise. So again, you'll have kind of like 2 minutes for your team to align on that top set of questions. And then each individual will have 5 minutes, or there'll be a 5-minute block of time for all the individuals to fill out the Post-its that they have. Are there any questions right now about how this is going to work before we kind of talk about getting our teams aligned and breaking into our groups? Lisa, I see your question about the team boards. They are a little bit over to the right. So I'm not sure if you were able to find those. Yeah. So each team has this board. And so when we start, you'll have 2 minutes for each team to answer their questions up top here. So that'll be 2 minutes. And then we'll have 5 minutes and each team member should try to fill out as many of these Post-its as they can. So kind of each team member should, give themselves a color of Post-its, and then you'll try to fill out all 20 Post-its if you can during that 5-minute block. So any other questions about how this is going to work? Team Wonder Woman.
So Lisa, the team spaces won't be named yet. You guys, that's a good point. We'll need to just claim team 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but the breakout rooms I have named, hopefully based on the team or project name you put in the icebreaker board, if that makes sense.
Can I ask a quick question? I'm sorry, I'm very confused. So are you saying that we just randomly need to join a team and then try and answer questions?
No, I think we'll assign kind of each team that you're already on will be on the same board. So I could go in and relabel those real quick, or one of us can.
I have the list in front of me real quick.
Okay.
So I will do it. It just won't be super pretty.
Sure.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Okay. Cool.
Great. Cool. Are there any other questions? Are we ideating solutions to the prompts on the board? So no, great question. You'll be doing this for the problem that your team is working on. I just wanted to share this as an example so that it would be a little bit more clear. So you can, when you start filling in the why, who, when, where, and how with your team, those will be for your team's problem and to try to get your team aligned on your team's problem. And then each person on each team will have that 5 minutes to fill in as many of the what post-its as they can. Is that a little bit more clear? Okay, cool. I will give Meredith another second to fill those in. And I think the only kind of reminder that I want to share before we send everyone to their breakout room. So when we send you to your breakout rooms after 2 minutes, we'll let you know that the 5 minutes is starting so that you need to, get to the what part and get to the ideating. But I think it's really important not to censor yourself when you start filling out these post-its. No idea is a bad idea. And also no idea is too big or too small at this point in the process. So you might think of something that seems like really down, into the minutia of your problem. And you might think of something that's just really, at the 10,000 feet view of your problem. Write down both of those things. Both of those might wind up being the idea that's, really the breakthrough moment for your team tonight. So don't censor yourself and try as hard as you can to fill out all 20 of your post-its. And we will, we'll see how it goes. And then, so at the end of the 5 minute window, we'll all kind of regroup here to evaluate and see how. Okay, great. Well, I know we are a little bit behind on time, so I'm happy to answer any other questions in the chat, but we want to keep things moving. So I will pass it over to Ijoma, who's going to lead us in our next exercise where we'll be looking at some different ways of solving your problem.
Ijeoma, take it away.
All right. Can you, I guess, move the board back to?
Oh, yes, I can do that. All right, there we go.
All right. Hey everyone. So we're going to kind of walk into my exercise called "What Would X Do?" The overall goal of this exercise is going to have you thinking different ways to kind of approach or create some ideas that you might use in your projects. Just to give you a little bit of background, before we, usually get started creating a new project or designing something new, it's always kind of best to look towards the past, see what exists. And we do so because we want to kind of understand design approaches. We don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel. Understand what works well, and more importantly, what could work better if you're improving on an existing idea. And also look for sources of inspiration. So this is just like another exercise to kind of get you thinking in another way to generate more ideas. So for the exercise itself, what would X do? X is going to be, in this case, for this exercise, a company or a product. And as far as exercise, you'll first start by looking at a real world example, and then kind of answering the question like, what is unique or what stands out with this project? Is there anything that you find interesting? And then thirdly, how can you apply your learnings to your actual project? Just moving on to this, just kind of give you an example. We'll use the same example that Kristen mentioned earlier with a design restaurant reservation management platform. In this case, for the example company I chose Google, just Google search as my real world example. And I thought about what would I find unique just by going on Google just as a product. One of the things I first noticed is that it's very easy to find search on Google page. Like that is actually pretty much the only real primary action you can take in Google. And it might seem a little bit underrated, but the idea to like easily understand what the purpose of your project is or have it be the first thing someone can see is important. And then I also kind of noticed that as I searched through a whole bunch of different terms that it saved my previous searches. So the idea that I can either kind of guess like what I'm going to search next. So the example for this, I was considering buying a new laptop. So the fact that I could save my previous searches allowed me to kind of move back and forth a little bit easier. And then when I thought about how I could apply this to the example project of the restaurant management platform, I thought about the idea of just like having an easy way to search for reservations, thinking if it's a busy restaurant, they want to easily just put in a query of whether that's an order number, reservation number, or name to find a reservation. So it should be easy to find, top and center. And then I also thought about the idea of, from kind of thinking about the saving previous searches, what if you could present the last 5 reservation searches on a side panel. So the idea that maybe people are waiting for their tables and need to relook at reservations. So you don't have to necessarily enter a query again in order to find reservation. You can just click through a previous reservation. So the idea of allowing you to influence your future behaviors by your past behaviors. So in this case, Google and a restaurant management platform might not be the same exact tool, but you can learn from other products and other features you might see in different applications to influence how you might build your own solution. All right. So moving on to the actual exercise. So just kind of walking you through like what you'll do specifically in your teams. You will review an example site. Your example sites are going to be in your team boards. You're kind of going to take some time to discuss with your team, like what stands out. Like what do you find unique or interesting about like the example site I kind of presented. And then like the third thing you'll do is kind of take some notes. Like what do you notice, what stands out, and also take some notes about how you can apply that to your own project. So you'll have 2 companies, each 5 minutes each, 5 minutes for each template. And there are a few post-its on your example board to kind of get you started, but you should definitely feel free to add more or just copy and paste the current ones on there to have a little bit more to do. But yeah, I guess that's going to be the challenge I want you to undertake for this. And then I want to kind of take a second and stop and ask if anyone has any questions before we get started. All right, so I guess the first thing I'll ask is how do people like just view the exercise in general, like thoughts, feelings, easy, hard, or interesting? For me. Any other thoughts?
What was challenging about it, Autumn?
I think we kind of talked about this in our group and we sort of looked at Facebook and YouTube because I feel like I don't think about the things, that make it unique so we kind of had to, we talked about this. We kind of had to like look at it again to remember.
Yeah, I mean, I think that So I spent most of my time at NPR working on the mobile team, and there was definitely a similar experience where we had to, we were creating an offline listening feature, but we had no requirements yet. And then the request from the product manager was everyone on the team, like, look through apps, any app, I don't care like which one, and provide like information about like how those could be influential towards like the feature that we had not yet built or we knew how it looked like, which was kind of hard because we also find ourselves like we started with typical podcast apps and looking at it to be like also YouTube and just apps in general. And so I think what I found is that like a lot of times you might not you can draw inspiration from different areas. Like we got information from how to test things, what people expect. And we were able to use those insights later on, even though that wasn't like a typical approach. So just to kind of always encourage you to look out, look a little bit beyond the box to try and see if it can help you solve your issues or solve your idea. All right. Oh, yeah, Karen said helped her with the out of the box ideas. All right. Well, with that, just I'm going to make sure everyone has enough time for the other exercises. I'll pass it over to Minjin to do the next exercise.
Yes. So hi everyone. I'm Minjin, and I'm going to introduce another activity, which is how we can prioritize a variety of ideas your team generates. So let's talk about the affinity mapping first. So what is the affinity mapping? As these two pictures that we are showing on this mirror box. So affinity mapping is a great way for us to capture our idea, like concepts, and anything like your team that generates to solve this specific problem space. And usually what we are going to do is after you just putting all these idea on the table, we are going to just group all these similar sticky note who share the same or similar idea or concepts together into things or topics. So by doing this, it can help us understand like, is there any like overlapping like idea or concept we have from each other? And usually like we will using other colors of the sticky note to synthesize the things or topic for a group of the similar concept. So this is affinity mapping. So it is a great way for you, for your team, if you have tons of like idea, firstly, like grouping it into a topic, into a thing to help you narrow down your idea. Because after you're doing this activity, maybe you will find that we have this pretty similar idea, or we can combine this idea together. So let's go into the next one. And when after we are doing this affinity mapping exercise, it is also a time for us to think about the framework for the prioritization. So you might be wondering like why we need the framework, because when we are creating a framework to prioritize the idea, it is a great way for us to structure, organize, and prioritize all these informations, idea, and concept. And it will allow you and your team to see all these different like concept information, to see the things differently from a new connection, from a new perspective. And you will be able to see the patterns or any like insights after you are doing this prioritization activity. So it is also a great way for you and your team to simplify the complexity, as well as trying to analyze throughout the entire like design process. So today I'm going to introduce this very simple like framework for you to prioritize your idea, which is like 2+2 metric. So originally, this is like business tool. Originally, it is coming from a business like tool, and then it adapt to the design process, and it's useful for us to see the larger like pattern things and any opportunity areas. And again, it is also like good for us to organize and differentiate a variety range of the idea like concepts or any like information you might have. And it's a great way for us to identify any like desirable and feasible solutions. So right now, like for this workshop, I create a template for us we can leverage in our next exercise for this 2+2 metric. Maybe we can go into the next slide. Yeah, so here is the impact slash efforts metrics we are going to use for today's exercise. And what is the impact means here? So we can think about the impact from three lenses. First of all, is the customer base. So how many like customer or how many people will be like impact if you are using this specific idea or solution, and what kind of value you are going to bring into the customer, like how satisfied this solution it is for our customers, what kind of benefit, what kind of benefit customer will get if they are provided with this solution. And another thing we can think about for the impact is about the business metric. So how will this solution will help us meet our business goals and the success metric, and how this can help us to increase the revenues, increase the customer base. So this is the impact you can think about. And what is the effort means here? So the efforts we are trying to focusing on is the implementation effort. So think about like how difficult or how easy this solution or this idea would be for the engineering team to build and implement this idea. If this is really hard to build, it will be the higher efforts solutions for both of you team to think about. And let's jump into the next slide. So here is exactly what we are what's this impact slash effort metric look like. So if you see there's a two line, one is low effort to high effort, and the other one is low impact and to high impact. If this is the idea with the low efforts and the high impact, that is a great idea for your team to consider. If this is the idea with the high effort and high impact, this is still the good idea to consider. However, maybe think about like how much time the engineering team they need to implement. So it will still be some discussion around your team to think about whether we are going to use this good idea as our final solutions. And below this is like the low efforts and low impact, which is just an okay idea for you to consider. And another one is we will take a lot of engineering effort to implement these solutions, and it will have the lower impact on our business, on our customer side, which is the bad idea we cannot use for our like solutions. Here is just a few of the example I'm using. If we can go into the next slide, yeah. Here is a few of the example that I'm trying to using these methods to play around the prioritize the example of the idea we are having for this design challenge. As an example, like designing a restaurant reservations management platform based on this impact slash efforts metrics. And we also provide these templates on each group of the team Miro board. So in the next exercise, we are going to use these impact slash metrics template to for all of you team to prioritize your idea. Yeah, so that's it. How many time we have for the prioritization activity?
Let me look. We wanted to do 30 minutes, which we don't have. So let's start.
Can also reduce the journey mapping activity as well, because we know part of that's going to be a take home.
Okay.
So
Well, let's start with 15 minutes, I guess, and see how far we get.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and let me know like if you teams have any questions. We are here to help if you are doing this activity.
So if you go back over to your team space, you'll all have the matrix in your section, and just any of the sticky notes that you placed on your team section above, you can just move those down and start to discuss where you think they should go on the matrix. All right, so how was that, everybody? What were some of the discussions like?
I think our team was a little confused just in terms of what high effort and low effort really meant. So we got a little stuck there trying to figure that part out.
Yeah, it's challenging even when you do have developers in the room to be able to try to do that. But when it's a room full of designers and researchers, it makes it even harder. So what did you end up, how did you end up kind of framing that?
I think for us, we just kind of went ahead thinking about it from our side of things, fully knowing that, you know, when it comes time to do this in a group setting with like other PMs and developers and stuff, like their input would be pretty valuable. But since we don't have that, just kind of went ahead and did that, you know, we tried to do it our best we could, but then we also found that being able to group them by theme kind of helped us a little bit more, because we had like sticky notes where we started to see like there was themes within our ideation. And so we did like another little board where we just decided to kind of group them by a theme.
Nice.
Our team was a bit confused whether we were supposed to be utilizing existing sticky notes from the top or if we were recreating new sticky notes for this activity. Because I noticed that some teams had kind of narrowed down certain features at in the first activity, and we kind of did it differently. So we ended up deciding to create like more features and all new sticky notes for this activity, but I don't know if that's right or wrong. So.
There is no right or wrong. If you have something on your matrix, then you completed the activity. So there you go. But sorry for not making that more clear. Didn't mean to make you have to do rework or more work, but either way.
It was helpful. I just didn't know which, it was helpful to do. I just didn't know which phase we were supposed to be doing those sticky notes in. Like, were they supposed to have already been created, or was this the time to create them?
I also think what's nice about these is like you can kind of adjust them, you know, based on whatever you're doing. So like it, you know, I mean, personally, I never feel like it has to be one way or another. I kind of just take it and run with whatever you know, our team is doing or whatever suits our needs. So that's kind of what's nice about these exercises, that they're flexible to be able to do that.
100%. Was that Karen? Yes.
Yeah.
That is the golden ticket, I think, of product design, is that there's not really one set way and you can adapt it to whatever your use case is. So awesome. Any other feedback before we jump to the next activity?
This is Jen. I think it's so funny, like sometimes we have similar sticky notes, but people would put them in a complete different sections. Like sometimes people would think like making a reservation is a low effort, but some people would think it's high effort. But we're all like designers and researchers. I don't think anyone's, you know, seeing this from a engineer perspective, but we all think very differently.
Yes. And if helpful for the remainder of this hackathon series, if you continue to do a prioritization exercise as you come up with more ideas, if it's helpful to think of it just as effort of prototyping the feature and usability testing the feature. The more complex the feature is, of course, the more time it's going to take to design it and the more effort it will take to do the test plan and analyze the test plan. So you could just use that as a stand-in instead of development effort. All right. Well, Christine, I think we'll kick it back to you. We are a little bit over time, so we may not be able to go into breakout rooms to work on this activity together, but I would love for Christine to be able to introduce it and walk through her experiences with it.
Great, thank you. I will try to do the abbreviated version of this. And I also just, I mean, I really love that prioritization exercise. It's great, it's easy. And also it seems like folks are able to create even more ideas from Ijoma's exercise as well. So hopefully at this point, your team has started to see a couple of these ideas that are starting to stand out as the best solution. Maybe they have that low effort and high potential impact, or maybe they're standouts for some other reason that these exercises have helped you reveal. So what we are going to do next, or give you for homework at this point, is a journey map of one or maybe one or two solutions for your team's problem. So we'll kind of go over what this is tonight, and then you can, kind of take your user journey templates with you for you and your team to complete those. And I mean, to be really clear, the idea wasn't that you would complete them tonight. It can take at least an hour to do a full user journey map, but we were hoping to give you a little bit of time to, to start on these tonight. Okay, so user journey maps. Can folks either like raise their hand or give a shout out reaction of some kind if you've done journey mapping before? I'm just kind of curious if folks have experience. Looks like maybe half. Okay, cool. So when I started preparing for this workshop, I got a little tied up in what a journey map really is, because in the field of UX, we refer to a lot of different kinds of maps as journey maps. So I just put a few of those examples here and a link to an article if you want to read a little bit more about that. But really the gist of things is that these are all different types of maps that are ways for us to build a common understanding of some aspect or some flow or process that's associated with people interacting with our product. So a journey map becomes a shared artifact that we can use with our team or with other stakeholders to communicate about our idea and help us make a decision for moving forward in the process. We're back with our good example idea of of a team that's designing a restaurant reservation management platform, right? And so we had some ideas that answered our what question, and then maybe we did those on our prioritization, our 2x2 square. And so I just picked a random one that I had on here as one to use as an example for the journey map. So I picked the one that said you could update parties that were on your reservation list with their status, like arrived, seated, late, canceled, or done. And I think that's an idea that you might have been able to come up with on your own if this was a problem you were working on, or maybe, looking at what other places do and how they might mark reservations. So this journey map is really just kind of going through what a worker might do during the shift. And so I kind of have the beginning of the shift, they're looking at all of the reservations, and then they're looking at only tonight's reservations. And then in this middle part of the journey map, is where they're actually doing that task of marking the table, updating the table status in the software. And so if you think about this happening, one time over the course of a dinner service at a restaurant, these steps here are going to happen again and again and again. Each time a table comes in and, get seated, or if we see that a table's late, or when a table leaves, we're going to mark them as done. So these kinds of things are going to happen over and over again. But our journey map is just going to show us this kind of one example of this interaction. And, kind of what happens at this like piece of the journey at all these different things. So I think that, the real kind of takeaways that we're focusing on is in the journey map is, what is the customer doing? What part of the service are they engaged with when this happens? How does the customer feel about this while it's happening? And finally, at the bottom of this journey map, we have opportunities. And this is where you can look at the experience and you can see any low points or any areas where the customer gets tied up and call out ways to improve that experience. And so again, on this journey map, if you look at this one as an example, remember that our customer is the person who works at the restaurant. And so I've tried to call the people who would eat at the restaurant guests. So that's the kind of differentiation between guests and customers on this journey map. So again, this is really pretty brief, but I want to let folks kind of look at this. And if you have any questions about what you see here, if you want to go ahead and give a shout out in the chat on those, or just jump in with your question. And I also wanted to share that this is a template for user journeys that lives right here in Miro. And we've included one of these for each of you in your team's workspace. There's more than this one that's available just in Miro. And there are a lot of user journey templates that are available online for free. So like Miro has more, there's some for Sketch, there's some for Figma, there's some for other software, and they're all of like varying levels of complexity. So, you can find the journey mapping template that's easy for you to plug your information into, that's going to make sense for you, that's as simple or as complex as you need it to be for whoever your audience is. So any questions on that? Okay. So on the next slide, I had like a really simplified version of what a user journey map could be. And so, each column here would just be a kind of different step that the user is taking. And you could go and fill those all in, because these are the real basics that you're looking for. So you could even basically just do this like in a Google Sheet or in Excel or in any kind of grid framework and fill this out to create a simple journey map that you can use to figure out the steps for the solution that you're working on. And again, these may take up to an hour to complete. So, I think that each of you has been working with your team. So hopefully you'll have some time over this next week to really look at those solutions that floated to the top, and then pick one or two of those and do a journey map with it. So I think we're not going to do breakouts on this. So are there any questions on this, or anybody looking for clarification before we hand it back over to our hosts? I know that was really fast.
I just want to reiterate something that you said at the beginning, of that you were getting hung up on what a journey map is. And I think this is something that's really easy to get hung up on, because we think of it as really visual. And so we want it to be pretty, and we want it to have all of the bells and whistles, but all of these artifacts are really just conversation tools for you and your team to get clear on what you want the experience to be. So that's why it doesn't matter where you put it, if it's in an Excel sheet or in Illustrator, it's just a conversation tool.
Yeah, 1000% for sure.
Was there an additional slide over here that I should have?
No, this was the one I was going to do at the end of the, when we came back together after our breakout room, so.
Perfect. And over here, like Christine said, in your team spaces, you each have one of these at the bottom that you can use. And this, I think, Christine, correct me if I'm wrong, this came from the templates
Yes.
section in Miro here.
Yes.
So if you typed in, I don't know.
I think I did just journey map, and they have a couple that would be useful.
Yeah. These two, probably.
So if there's one that's more simplified, that it's easier for teams to use, and especially if you want to do more than one, because sometimes I do. So that's why I like really do a simple one, or just put it in a grid and write everything out and stick an emoji on there, or whatever works.
Awesome. I think that journey maps are the most fun part because you really get to think about your user as a character in a story of how they'll interact with it in their life. So hopefully you guys will all be excited and feel empowered to go try this on your own in your teams.